So I want to talk a little bit about mother and father wounds in inmates. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling men and women who've been incarcerated for several years now. I don't do it as much anymore, but I did work in a correctional system for some time. This commenter says, Dr. Jones, I'm curious about your experiences with inmates and the differences between offenders that have heavy trauma from mothers versus fathers. So, first of all, I think most inmates have trauma from both parents. Either they didn't have any, or their parents were abusive, or, some other things were going on. But, I'll try to demonstrate or talk a little bit to you about as much of what I know. So one thing I've noticed about working with men, especially, which is why I did the original post that talked about violence among men, um, is that men who suffer from the father wound, again, that violence and aggression and that need for acceptance continues to show up, amongst men. That need for acceptance or validations, and that can get very tricky, very dangerous. And it's one of the reasons why I don't think that fathers and sons or uncles and cousins and things I don't think that they should be at the same institution, or so when you have men that are at the same institutions with their fathers, for example, they are continuously looking for validation and acceptance from their fathers, and that need for approval. What that leads to is violence and aggression. My father, in my eyes, is a top dog criminal. If he's a top dog criminal, he's an OG criminal, he's been incarcerated for forever. I need to step my game up so that um, I can have his approval. I can be his right hand man, or there can be some real solid credibility in my father's eyes. That tends to lead to a very dangerous duo in a lot of cases, or a very unruly duo. And then the same thing happens when, youngster, I'll call him youngster, goes out and tries to do everything for his father's approval, and he doesn't get it, or their relationship with their father becomes contentious. He is still going to try and be Billy Badass, to retaliate against his father even more so, because he's got an axe to grind. He still has something to prove. And he also has to show that he can't be punked in front of everybody else. And so either way it goes, it could be very dangerous and contentious. You have a lot of men that, again, this could be from father's wounds or mother wounds. A lot of times it can come from the father. You have men that don't know how to deal with their feelings. Um, they don't know how to emotionally regulate. And then there's also the sense of like, I need to be aggressive somehow, but I don't necessarily have someone else to be aggressive towards beside myself. So you have a lot of men in custody who tend to self-harm. They self-harm through tattooing, through drug use, through hitting, biting themselves, all kinds of, self-mutilation and things like that. So you have men that, like, when they go through some sort of emotional turmoil, they will lash out against themselves in a way that's aggressive and destructive. When I've seen men with a mother wound, one mother wound that we don't really talk about, but I think plays a lot into criminal thinking, is when mothers are, that's my baby. When mothers pedestalize their sons, especially, their son can do no wrong, and they give their son everything that they want. There's no wrong that their baby can do in their eyes. I've spoken about this before too. A lot of times when men become incarcerated through the mother wound, they will run to their mama even while they're incarcerated, and their mama will be their right hand man. So if their mama is on the outside, they're running to the phone, they're calling their mama, do this, talk to that person, run this. So their mama is essentially their running man, and will do anything they ask them to, even when it's illegal. And if it's not their mama, it'll be some other female, their sister, something like that, and maybe some woman that they're booed up with. But any sort of infraction that occurs, they're running and tell their mama, and their mama is going to call up there and threaten to sue and do whatever on behalf of their baby. The other piece, in terms of entitlement, where they've constantly been stroked by their mother, and the way that this shows up is it can show up in their crimes. When their mother's never told them no, and then they've encountered someone who has told them no. That is likely to be a victim of crime, or frustration and rage because how dare you tell me no? Or, if their mother does finally tell them no, or I'm not able to do that, a lot of times their mother will become a victim of their crime as well. This can also show up clinically, whenever you have male inmates working with a female staff member, such as myself. A lot of times there is this immediate push for manipulation or to get their way, through power struggles, and the power struggles can show up in many different ways. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to walk out. I'm going to lash out and call you out of your name, or I really don't have to do anything that I don't want to. If there is a father wound, meaning that a father has abandoned or not been present, there is a lot of times anger and frustration and resentment towards women, just strong dislike, or strong disdain for women. And there is, again, this push for validation. And there's also sort of this fear of other men, which I think I've talked about before. So a lot of times men who have father wounds or have been sexually abused by a man, particularly if their father wasn't there, are afraid of another man. And so this can come across as aggression as well. It could come across as like, don't look at me. I don't like being in the room with other men. I don't want to be celled up with another man. But a man's penis is a threat. And so that aggression, that intimidation is really fear of other men and distrust from other men. And a lot of men, when they get mental health services, a lot of them don't necessarily want to have a male clinician that they're working with. And again, a lot of times there's a bilateral wound for both parents. So a lot of inmates really like to have stability and structure, despite how they may show up. So they like monotony, they like routine, they like knowing what they're going to do, and who they're going to be working with, how things are going to go. They prefer to be in control of those things, but they don't like it when there's a change up. So I was there for almost, my institution for almost 5 years. And so all of mine, were stable. They weren't suicidal. They settled down and they calmed down. They're outside, I'm outside too, and I'm always there, and I'm super nosy and I'm involved, right? But when I left, when there's a change in clinician, when I wasn't there, from being sick or something like that, they don't like that. So they prefer to have that same routine in their structure. And a lot of them don't have, necessarily parents to come back out to. Their parents are gone. Their parents are addicts. So they don't really like engaging with their parents. So a lot of them are very much in survival mode while they're in, and then as soon as they get out of prison. And so they're going to do what they need to do in order to get their needs met, stay where they need to stay, have some money in their pockets, etc., etc. Hope that helps. Thanks so much.